Good afternoon, my beautiful kings and queens. I hope that you guys are having a beautiful and a blessed afternoon. So I just want to say that every time you have to take a setback, that is God's way of setting you up for a divine comeback. So before every next level, there will be a season of pulling back. There will be a season where you are forced to be stretched. There will be a season where you feel like you are being pulled backwards. And that is so that He can project you even further. That is so you can propel forward. There can be no propulsion without being pulled back. Think about an arrow. You have to pull that arrow back in order for the trajectory of the arrow to be shot forward. So in that last season, for a lot of you all, you felt like you were you took 10 steps forward to take 20 steps back, or you felt like every time you would go to try to do something, there was an obstacle in your way, or you felt like your progress was being dismantled in a sense. And that is because God desires to rebuild you. That is because God has far more in store for you than you can even imagine. So that pulling back or that stretching back, that was so number one, you can be refined in the season where you are going. God calls for you not to be in your rough form. He calls for you to be a bit more refined, and that is in your mindset, in the way that you speak, in the way that you handle things emotionally. God had to refine you in that last season. Number two, He wanted to make sure that you could handle the burdens of this next level. So He had to make sure that, like I said before, that your back was strong enough to carry the weight of the responsibilities that you are about to face in this next season. And number three, He was checking to make sure your heart posture was in the right place for where a lot of you guys are going, for where you will be seated, for the responsibilities that you will have, for the people that you will be around. Your heart posture has to be in the right place. So in that pulling back, He was checking to make sure that your heart is in the right place, checking to make sure that every bit of smut or every bit of bad ways was burned out of you. So that's why you had to be pulled back, because that was a training ground. You were being trained in that last season. So when you're being pulled back, it gives you the opportunity to review your life. It gives you the opportunity to go back and think and say, okay, how did I handle that last season? Is there something that I could have changed? Is there something that I could be doing better in the next season that God is about to propel me in? So when God made you sit down, when God stopped the regular flow of things, you were forced to evaluate and reevaluate, to see what you can do better and to see where you have faltered. But had He not sat you down or pulled you back in that last season, you probably would not have seen things from this perspective. You probably would not have been looking from a bird's eye view. I always say, when you want to see the reality of things, you have to imagine that you're looking from a bird's eye view. You have to pull out your emotions from certain situations. You have to pull out the familiarity from certain situations and take a bird's eye view. So had God not pulled you back in that last season, you wouldn't have gotten your bird's eye view. I just want to encourage you guys not to get discouraged also when these things are happening. We often talking about the pruning of trees, the pruning of plants, the pruning of things. God also prunes. So when you're being pulled back, He's cutting out certain things so that way you can produce more fruit. So it is important not to be discouraged in the pruning season, because we know after you've been pruned, you're about to bear more fruit. And God is so strategic with these things. He's so strategic with the way that He cuts you. He's so strategic with the way that He pulls you back, because ultimately it's your growth. Ultimately, the Lord desires to see you grow. Ultimately, the Lord desires to see you bear much fruit. So in the pulling back and in the pruning, we know that it is so you can bear much more fruit. So don't get discouraged in this season. You were pulled back last season, but this season you are going to propel forward like never before. In this season, you are going to experience things like never before because you've been refined. You are going to be able to interact on a whole nother level because you have been refined. You're going to be able to see things on a whole nother level because in that last season, that was your refining process. That was the season where, like I said, God had to burn out things out of you that no longer belong. He had to make sure that on this level that you're going to be on, that your mental is in the right space, your emotional is in the right space, your problem solving skills is in the right place, the way that you handle situations, the way that you handle people, the way that you handle just you, it has to be in the right space. So that's why God allowed that pulling back in the last season. So I love you guys, and just remember, you may be required to stretch. You may be required to stretch in this next season, but you will not break. The Lord will stretch you, but you won't break. So love you guys. I hope you have a beautiful and a blessed afternoon.